Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Image, and in this video I'm going to address a question I get asked a lot around this time of year. It's about buying a printer. And the typically kind of questions I get is, I'm thinking of getting such and such printer, is this the best printer? Well, it's very difficult to answer that question. I've looked at it elsewhere as what actually best means. But really, what you're looking for is what is the best printer for what you want to do with it. This is the one thing that I think people sometimes don't spend enough thought as to what they want to do with a printer and how they're going to use it over time. Now, it could be that you decide you like printing a lot, and after a while you decide you want a better printer. Well, that's great. If you start with a reasonable one, you can get a more expensive one if you feel it's more likely, because in general, the better the printer, the more expensive it is, and the cheaper in the long run the inks are to use. Now, I'll mention a few printers here. I've got lots of printer reviews. I put a link to various reviews and information in the notes, so if you're curious about a specific printer, do have a look at that. And as ever, if you've got any questions, please do ask, because it's people's questions that give me the ideas for the videos and everything like that. So first of all, what do you want to do with this printer? Is it just for a home office? You're going to be printing documents and stuff like that? Because in which case, almost any basic printer will do, and probably an ink tank one is better if you're going to use it much, because the ink costs are less. Now, I mentioned ink costs there. I'll come back to this in some more detail and talk about cartridges and bottles of ink and stuff like that. But in general, basic office printers, there are so many of them. I don't really review many basic office printers because the model numbers change so quickly. They come and go. They're all much of a muchness from an output quality, so there's not really much to look at in them. But I will come back to some specific examples here. But I said documents, yeah, whatever. You might want a document feeder or something like that. Who knows, you might even want a fax facility on it. I'm sure people still use them occasionally. But let's say you want to print photos. You say, I want to print my photos. Where are your photos coming from? How are you going to print them? Because if you've got photos on, something like an iPad here or a phone, the aspects of colour management that allow me to produce very high-end prints on big printers, they don't work really on here. So if you're looking to print just photos from a phone, quite often, as long as you use a paper that is meant for the printer, you can get away with it, and you can get reasonable looking pictures. Now, definitions of reasonable vary. When I get a printer, the example I'm thinking of is I tested a while ago Canon G550. There's 650, 650, there are all kinds of different models. They're ink tank printers, so you fill them up with ink in tanks from bottles like that. This is for a much bigger printer I've got over here. You fill them up from that, and the idea is that the inks don't cost you much, because certainly if you look at something, and these are cartridges for a Pro 300 Pigment ink printer, very nice printer, but the cartridges themselves are not terribly big, and there are 10 of them that goes in, so that's quite an expense if you're doing much printing. So hence people's are attracted to the ink tank printers. Now, if you're doing the photos, ideally, if you want better quality, you need to get your photos into a computer where you can do some rudimentary editing and check things. It makes a big difference. If that is too much trouble for you, then that suggests that you really would be wasting your money getting an expensive, good quality printer. Something like this, the G550 or one of the Epson EcoTank printers, will probably give you as much as what you want. If at a certain point you decide that, well, you want better photos out of it, well, I've published lots of videos, I've written lots of articles about how to get better out of it. What about if you're printing graphics and the like? Well, you can see the picture here of the G550. I was testing it printing greetings cards. And as long as you get the right sort of paper, and this is a very important thing, so you get the wrong paper, doesn't matter what your printer's like, it will produce rubbish results, you can get perfectly reasonable cards out of it. Now, I've got lots of other videos looking at the business side of things, and one of the things I would say about the G550, yes, I got some nice looking prints out of it, but they took a while, and I could only really load 1 or 2 sheets of cardboard at a time. So if you had a rush offer for 30 cards, that's going to take you a long while to print. So think carefully if you're using it for a business. Now, I've got lots of stuff looking at business aspects of printing and photography and the likes of that. So, that's great for occasional cards for people's birthdays, the odd Christmas card or something like that, then that's fine on that. But if you want to do larger volumes, you're going to probably have to spend more on a bigger printer. So if you're doing drawings on an iPad, for example, you're using a paint package on it or something like that. Now, this particular one here, I will be having a look at some of these things, because this one here, relatively new, this was my father's iPad. As some people know, he died recently, and we got this one for him mainly for use as for video, for FaceTime on it. But I don't use a pad very much, so I'm going to be experimenting a bit to see if it is actually possible to get good colour out of one of these in prints. I'm sure it is, but I'm sure it's not as simple as you might think. So there are going to be complexities in it, but I will be having a look at that. If you've got any questions, let me know. Don't have much software on it, so unless it's software I can get for free or very little, I'm not going to be doing detailed tests of software. Although I do believe that I could run things like Lightroom on it. I have no real desire. I dislike Lightroom anyway, but anyway, that's another matter to look at some point in the new year. So, if you really want the best quality pictures for something like this or a phone, export them to a computer where you've got more control. The drivers are designed for proper color management. The G550 I tested on the Mac had serious color management issues. I was able to work around it, but in general, that one is much more difficult to use on a Mac. This one, Epson ET8550, that was excellent. In fact, most of the printers I test are pretty good. Now, look at running costs. Ink tanks are probably better for most people. I put a link to an outline of print costs I found on a website from Red River Paper in the States. A very good website. They've done a lot of testing there. It's the sort of stuff I can't do, of testing to get how much it costs to do print. Worth a look if you're thinking of a printer. As I say, I put a link in the notes to that. But I said ink tanks, yes, ink tanks are generally cheaper. You will pay more for the printer. There are currently no high-end printers with ink tanks. That may come one day, but at the moment, if you want a better printer, you're going to be using cartridges, but the cartridges are bigger. If you're buying a printer and see a good offer on it, beware ink subscriptions. Now, these vary around the world as to how draconian the terms are and by manufacturer. And whether you want anything to do with them. I'm instantly suspicious of subscription services. It is a way of making more money. It is out and out. Subscription services are for making money, as compared to one-off sales, cartridges and the likes of that. Subscription, well, the money goes out anyway. You end up spending potentially more. It is possible, if you have a lot of use, to get a benefit from subscription services, but I personally would not touch one with a barge pole. Now, that's just me, but what I say is if you're thinking of getting a printer and it comes with an ink subscription service, read the fine print very carefully and do your research as to if people have had problems with it, about cancellations and things like that. That's something to be very careful of. For better print qualities. Now, I've tested loads of these. This particular one here, this is Canon Pro 300. No, that's Canon Pro 300. The 200 and the 300 look very similar from this distance. That's the inks that go in that. They're great, but they're small cartridges, so they're relatively expensive. The papers you can use, loads of papers you can use in it. That's great. If you want really bright, vivid colours, I wouldn't say they're much better than this, but they suit glossy prints better. Something like a dye-based printer, like the Canon Pro 200, or even the Epson ET18100, which is a ink tank printer, which has dye-based inks on it. That looks very good. Dye-based inks, although many people have said I'd like to see a high-end dye-based printer, the manufacturers don't want to go there. So you will tend to find pigment inks in higher quality stuff. Certainly if you are producing stuff that you want to sell and you are looking at the more fine art end of things, although as I've said many times, fine art is a marketing term, much like giclée, completely made up, spurious marketing term, means whatever you want it to mean. Actually, what I want it to mean is I can sell the prints for a higher cost because I've called them that. That's all there is to it. But I got lots of stuff on that. But for better quality, something like Pro 300, the P700 and the much larger P900 from Epson. I'm going to be looking at the brand new Epson P5300 or 5370 in the States. I'm going to be looking at that relatively soon. That is the print heads of the P900 and 700 combined with the chassis of the P5000, which this is a P5000 it's here, and that has got some of the best paper handling, certainly for roll paper handling, that I've ever tested. It's absolutely superb, works a treat. That 5000 though is meant for commercial use, so it's meant for using every day. So I have to remember to switch this on every few days if I've not done any printing. You do not leave big printers like this unattended. The 5300, because it's coming from a 700, 900 background, will be, I'm hoping, much more amenable to sort of amateur photographer levels of use, or even professional photographer levels of use, because I don't print every day. I haven't got that much stuff to do to print. So remember that. But all of these printers here. What about some more of the ink tank printers if you're thinking of getting one? This one here, Epson ET2850. Now, normally it's 4-colour printer, black, cyan, magenta, yellow. The black is a pigment ink. The cyan, magenta, yellow are dye-based inks. If you print a glossy photo on this, it's only using the 3 coloured inks. Now, I've got lots in the review of this about how to get round some of these aspects, but this is a printer, which 2850, which is firmly aimed at the home office occasional printing of photos level. It's a very nice, it's an ink tank printer, so it's relatively cheap on inks, but in terms of print quality, it's not really what I would want to do. With the right papers, you can get half decent looking pictures out of it, but it takes a lot of effort. If you want better quality and you want an ink tank printer, the current best is a hybrid. Now, I always say current if I use the term best, because it could change next week with a new printer. But the Epson ET8550, it has its foibles. It has a mixed ink set. Paper choices are very important for getting the best out of it. But certainly that 8550, which is a 13-inch or A3 plus, that's this size printer. So that's an A3 plus print. That was done on the 8550. It's at Cannon Beach. It's done on a sort of art paper, heavy cotton rag art paper. Works very well for that. If you want a smaller version, if you decide you haven't got the space or you don't really need this, then the 8500 is letter or A4 size, so that'll print that size. One other thing to check on printers if you're looking at them in the specs, if you need borderless printing, be very careful if you need. Now, I always print borderless when I'm testing printers, as much as anything just to prove it can be done. I have no interest in borderless prints most of the time. They are useful for cards and the like, but quite often borderless is only available at certain specific sizes. So I know of people who've gone for a particular printer and then discovered the size of cards they want to print won't print borderless. Now, borderless is a great way of messing up the insides of printers, no matter what printer you use. I can do a form of borderless on this, the P5000, but the overspray has to be collected. It messes up the inside of printers. There is a reason why in commercial print, if you want borderless, what you do is you print like that and then you chop it. You get a guillotine and you produce borderless that way, rather than producing borderless this way, which oversprays the edge. But I've got lots of details of this in the printers. So there's a range of printers. Is there anything best? Well, I like the Pro 200 dye-based inks, it's cartridges, so it's relatively expensive. But if you use that on something like a gloss metallic paper, you get really sharp, clear prints. It's a dye-based printer, so you might not want that. For general purpose, if you're going to get an ink tank printer, if you are concerned about quality, if you're a Mac user, I'm afraid the G550 and its ilk are sort of off the table from my point of view, because they don't, Canon in the drivers do not support colour management. They force you to use AirPrint. Does mean that these printers work fine with devices like that, but I've mentioned problems with that. But when it comes down to it, if I had to pick a general purpose printer at the moment, then the sweet spot is currently around the Epson 8550. Now the 18100 won't handle thicker paper. It certainly wouldn't print on this art paper like this very well. Prints glossy fine. And also for some reason Epson in the US have decided they don't want to release the Epson ET 18100. No idea why. That's Epson marketing for you. The same way as you won't be able to buy a black version of the 8550 here, you're going to get the white one in the States. That's because a lot of the big companies, they are one global brand, but they are local branches and local companies that set their own marketing policies. So I deal with Epson UK, which is part of Epson Europe. Epson US is a law unto themselves. They announce things when they feel like it and whatever. So anyway, lots of printers. I'm sorry I haven't said, yes, buy X, but I don't sell printers, so I don't really care whether you buy one printer or the other. I want you to buy, if you're going to buy a printer, to buy a printer that you will enjoy and get a lot of use out of. That's what my interest in. But say, apart from saying watch those ink deals and subscription services, it really depends what you want out of your printer. So I've got loads of this. I also recently created an index of the over 500 videos I've produced since somebody at Canon actually twisted my arm into start doing printers reviews for this stuff on video. I've got an index which covers absolutely everything I've done in far more detail than you can in anything that YouTube offers. Have a look at the notes for this video and you'll see that and all the information. As I said earlier, please do ask some questions. Hope that's been of use. Thanks very much. Bye.